president's first 100 days?
Well, it's been ambitious. I think, my concern is I was at the inauguration, he talked about unity and bringing the country together on both sides of the aisle. I'm on the Republican side, and I've been disappointed that we couldn't have a COVID package that was bipartisan. We're looking at an infrastructure bill that has every potential to be bipartisan because most on both sides want a good infrastructure package. I hope that he will consider that and not ram this through in a very partisan way. Now we'll have an announcement on a new education healthcare proposal that will cost another $2 trillion. Now we're talking about $6 trillion in a matter of 100 days. That's a lot of spending, and my side of the aisle also are looking at the massive tax increases that will be put on the American people in a pandemic economy when I think we can least afford that sort of oppression.
Is there anything that you've seen from the new proposal that he introduced today, and we'll hear more details, and I know there has to be actual legislation. Anything that you heard, though, so far that you could be on board with?
Well, I think, if you're looking at, helping with pre-K and community colleges, and that's the workforce issue, the community colleges, I think, but when you get into the massive tax increases, again, I don't want to see what we passed in the prior Congress, the tax cuts bill, be completely eviscerated, and in a COVID economy, really take us backwards when we're actually kind of moving forward out of the pandemic with a stronger economy.
And Biden says that when he looks at bipartisanship, he's looking at the support among the public, not necessarily support among members of Congress. Do you see it that way? And also, are you seeing support in your district for some of these proposals that Biden is proposing?
I think everybody likes infrastructure. They wanted a COVID relief package. I think it could have been done with both sides, supportive. And I would urge him to continue that spirit. I think that's who he is. I think he's being, quite frankly, influenced a lot by the far left in his party, kind of the tail wagging the dog. And I know AOC claims victory on this one. And I don't think that's where the center of America really is either. I was in the White House talking about supply chain issues coming out of China after COVID, medical, these advanced semiconductor chips. This, I think, has very broad bipartisan support bicameral, something I think the White House and myself and Republicans can work together on. And that will really be good for America. It'll bring manufacturing jobs back home and protect our national security at the same time.
So little bits and pieces, do you think, could get some bipartisan support?
This is and it's actually a huge idea, concept that I think we can get done with the administration in a bipartisan way. And I think most Americans want this. They don't care about who's scoring points, Republican or Democrat. They just want us to get something done. But I want it to be done. We want it to be done the right way. And I think anytime a president gets strong bipartisan support, that really strengthens any legislation.
On foreign policy, because you're the ranking member of Foreign Affairs, how do you think the president has been doing? He came into office saying that he wants to send a message that America is back. Is that how you see it?
Well, I think engaging with our allies is important, and I do think he's made progress there. I think, unfortunately, with China, it didn't have such a good meeting. We worry about the Iran getting back into the Iran deal right now. Afghanistan, we'll see what happens there. I'm worried about a takeover of Taliban and Al-Qaeda taking the country over, threatening our embassy, and particularly the women who are in Afghanistan that are under serious threat from the Taliban. Concerns me, and I would throw the border crisis in the foreign policy category because he reversed on day one the Remain in Mexico policy and these asylum cooperation agreements that the Border Patrol tells me was a direct cause and effect into this migration phenomena that we're seeing, these little children down there. And I've been down there many times, and I've never seen it quite this bad, Caitlin.
And you used to chair the Homeland Security Committee. Any changes that you've seen over the past few weeks that you see as improvements down at the border?
It's the worst I've seen it. I think the best we can do working together is to work with the State Department and get private investment in Central America. I met with the ambassadors down there. What they want is not just a bunch of money thrown down there and some corrupt governance, but rather private investment to get to the root cause. Why would a parent give their 6-year-old child to a trafficker, right? It's a very desperate situation. Right. So if we can work to uplift their economies of scale, we get to the root cause of why they're leaving in the first place. And we also help counter the malign influence of China in the region, which is very important to our foreign policy.
And Kamala Harris was tasked with addressing some of these root causes in Central America. Anything that you've seen come out from that, or is it too early to tell at this point?
It's way too early. I think I'm glad she had some meetings.
Okay.
I would also advise she go down to the Donna detention facility where I've been to see these children that actually violate CDC guidelines. It is a humanitarian crisis of proportions. Yet this is the United States of America, and to see that in the United States, she needs to see that. And I think the president does as well.
And back to other parts of foreign policy, what is the biggest issue facing this administration when it comes to foreign policy at this point?
I think the greatest threat to the long-term national security interests of the United States is the Chinese Communist Party and their aggression through Belt and Road Initiative globally, to their provocation in the South China Sea, to invading Hong Kong, to threatening Taiwan, what they did to the world with COVID, and what they're doing with supply chain. I just got out of a meeting with the Secretary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice, two very esteemed secretaries of state. And amazing how they were both on the same page when it came to this particular issue, that we really need to wake up and pay attention to what's happening coming out of China right now.
Okay. When it pertains to Russia, the president is supposed to meet with Putin at some point. Do you think there should be any preconditions to that meeting?
I think it's always good for world leaders to meet. I think the president needs to go in eyes wide open that Putin's not our friend. He's been very aggressive in Ukraine, trying to annex like he did with Crimea. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline, I wish the administration had been a little more firm on the sanctions we passed to stop this pipeline that's going to come out of Russia into Europe. That will make them more dependent on Russian energy. So, but look, it's always good for world leaders to see eye to eye and meet in person. I think to have an open, candid discussion would be healthy.
Have you seen a noticeable shift from this administration's approach to Russia from the previous one?
Well, people they think that Trump was real cozy with Putin. I think it was because of the rhetoric that he used. But when you look at the actions, and particularly Congress, we sanctioned Russia more than any other time in history based on their bad behavior. So, I do like the re-engagement with our allies because they're so important to us as we look at foreign nation adversary states like Russia, China. Iran's going to be a big issue moving forward. North Korea firing rockets off, our traditional adversaries.
And back to immigration, the president is going to likely be pushing for some kind of reform proposal, probably granting citizenship to DACA recipients. Is there any political incentive for Republicans to get on board with some immigration reforms?
Well, the timing's bad. I mean, I think we got a border crisis, a humanitarian crisis. A lot of Americans want that fixed before we start dealing with opening up our immigration system. And having said that, I've worked on this issue for many years. When I chaired Homeland with the Judiciary Committee, and we had fixes to DACA. We legalized the DACA kids and their status. So I think there's broad bipartisan support for that. It's just a question of how far you go with these programs. The timing's not particularly good, quite candidly, from a political standpoint because of the crisis on the border.
And who would you say is the leader of the Republican Party right now?
That's a great question. It's a very good question. I mean, I think time will tell. Okay. I mean, I think there are a lot of very good, qualified people out there that believe in our values. But I think there's not just one right now.
And is there a role for the former president to play?
I think he will. I mean, he will play a role. He's obviously getting involved in primaries. And I think what we need to do is take what his accomplishments and the policies of a strong economy, Operation Warp Speed, a lot of the positive things that were accomplished, reaching out to the working man and woman. I think that was great for the Republican Party to get into that market share, which traditionally Democrats thought was just theirs. And I think taking those policies, but in a positive agenda, and how can we get the working man and woman over to our way of thinking.